A new report has been released that China is considering $1.4 trillion worth of stimulus to help its currently floundering economy.
That is a huge deal.
Yeah, it's crazy. 1.4 trillion is a lot of money. It's 10 trillion yuan. This is an exclusive Reuters report that just came out today. So most of what I can report here is the facts, and then we'll kind of speculate on what this means based on our understanding of the Chinese economy. Here's the most interesting thing to me about the 1.4 trillion. The 60% of it, what was floated, what was reported, is going to go to removing bad debt from local government balance sheets.
That is so deeply important for China.
Yeah.
Quick background. Chinese localities aren't allowed to raise taxes in themselves. They have no real money generating possibilities except for selling off assets.
Yes.
But they're allowed to issue debt.
Yes.
Okay.
They can issue debt and they can sell land.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. So, but apparently, what the 6 trillion is supposed to go to is paying off local debt, but also like reacquiring some of the land that they've sold off in an attempt to rehabilitate it, because they're hoping. Okay, and so now we zoom out to talk about China's economy, right?
Okay.
China's economy has been floundering in large part because of consumption problems. For most advanced, I think all advanced economies, consumption of the actual people in the country drives more than half of GDP.
Yes.
In China, it does not. And part of that is because a property bubble has not exactly popped, but like the government has started letting air out of the property bubble. They've allowed the most major developers to default. They've way overbuilt as far as housing. And this is a problem because people in China had been encouraged to buy property as the kind of the safest asset that they could own to put their savings into.
Property that wasn't even built yet. Property that was going to get built like 6 years from now, 7 years from now.
Yes, they would pre-buy apartments that weren't even built. And then this property bubble started deflating. And that means that people's assets started deflating in value. And so now people feel like they have to save way more money because these assets that they had put all of their money into are actually liabilities. And all of their savings are going away. And so they're worried about retirement. So they're not spending as much because they need to save more. China's savings rate, this is kind of a sidebar.
You know the Chinese saving rate?
It's over 50%.
Wow.
Our savings rate is under 5%. This is why the U.S. economy is able to go so strong. We just spend like
and
crazy.
Consume.
Yes.
Wow. I didn't know their savings rate was that high.
But
it also makes sense because they have such an older population.
Yes.
Right? And because they have an older population and the retirement age in China is like 50 years old for women, 55 for men, because their retirement age is so young, they have to start saving earlier. And so their peak consumption years are less. Okay.
Totally.
Like we're spending a ton of money between 25 and 45, right? Yep. We're spending money out the butt. We're sending kids to college. We're going to be buying homes. We're going to be buying cars. Chinese, when you're 45, you're 10 years from retirement. You got to get your stuff in order.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. So they're hoping that they can use this massive stimulus to infuse a little bit more confidence in the property sector. They're encouraging local governments to pay off their debts because the China's national debt to GDP ratio is pretty low. It's lower than the US.
Yes, this is a good stat.
But if you include local government debt, it's like 270%.
If you include the state government debt in the United States, we don't hit the Chinese number at all.
No.
Right.
No.
And it's because these localities in China, they don't have the ability to raise taxes. They have no way to pay for this debt.
Yes.
And so now with China going, the way China, I'm asking you this now, China's taking out this debt, right? Now they're giving this money to the localities.
Yes.
And then those localities are going to use it to pay off their debt.
I don't know if they give it to the localities and then they pay off the debt, or the national government can directly pay off the debt. I don't know exactly how.
But either way, China is now centralizing their debt.
Yes.
Which is interesting.
Exactly.
Which is very interesting.
Exactly.
They are now centralizing their debt.
Yeah. And I feel like this is where it's important to give the context of like this debt proposal is like 8% of GDP.
Yeah.
So this is automatically.
It's a big deal.
Like that's a lot. That's a massive chunk. When we talk about the US's current debt to GDP ratio being what, like 120, 125, 130%?
That's if you include intergovernmental debt. If it's not intergovernmental debt, it's like 92, 94.
Okay. I don't know, just adding 8% on top of that number.
That's a huge deal.
How does this shift the situation for the economy if the debt is more centralized? I know that besides paying off local government debt and trying to re-stimulate the property sector, their last priority with the stimulus is going to be to stimulate demand.
That's what I was about to ask you. What was the other 40% going to?
Exactly.
So it's going to be stimulating demand. Okay. Do we know how they're trying to do that?
We don't know. And I want to make it very clear. This has not been announced yet. This is all under consideration. The report comes from insiders who didn't want to be named because this hasn't gone out to the public yet.
I see.
But so we don't know exactly the mechanism that will be used. We do know that the problem in China is the lack of domestic demand.
Yeah, I mean, listen, what I would do, I would literally be like, listen, everyone in the country, if I'm in this much of a consumption problem, everyone gets $2,000. I'm taking back the $2,000 if you don't spend it in 6 months.
That's brilliant.
That's what I would do.
I love that.
That's what I would do.
Yeah, because they're facing deflation is the issue.
Yeah, they're actually facing deflation. Prices in China are going down.
Yeah,
which sounds great. Americans are like, ooh, I want my prices to go down. No, you don't, dude. You do not. No. You do not want your prices to go down. That means that all the companies that have invested in all new machinery to make these new products are all going to go underwater if all those things go down. Yeah. All the wage increases that we saw for the bottom of America, all that wouldn't have been possible. I always see this all the time. Oh, in 2005, a KFC meal was $3. Yeah, in 2005, your minimum wage wasn't even $7.25 yet. Mm-hmm. Do you really want to go back to that world? Yeah. The answer is no.
Exactly. Right? It doesn't make sense.
Let's go back to China here.
That way. Let's go back to China. Basically, yeah, but new data just came out like yesterday that PPI in China was down 5% year on year, or like 5% month on month, something crazy like that. Like the prices just keep going down.
We're going to put up the chart to make sure the right numbers here.
Sure. There's a limited amount of buyers internationally because they're still an export-driven economy, and Europe and the U.S. don't want to take on their excess savings anymore.
Yes.
And so they're stuck, and consumption is the only way for them to go. I'm just really curious to see if this changes our China story.
This has to change the China story, because I also want to add to this is coming at a time when international protectionism is on the rise. The Inflation Reduction Act, what Joe Biden passed with his green energy revolution, right? Mm-hmm. This thing it's only for American green energy revolution. It's not for a global green energy revolution. Yeah. It's for American green energy made here by Americans for Americans. Mm-hmm. And that's screwing over China big time. That's screwing over Europe to an extent big time. And so all these countries are now doing their internal industrial policy rather than having this free trade globalist approach that we've been doing for the last 25 years. And China's been thriving in that, but not anymore, because all the countries this was a raw deal for us in a lot of ways. Sometimes it was a great deal. Now it's not, and China's now facing the consequences for that.
And of course, as Americans, China has been painted as kind of our geopolitical adversary for many years now, since the Trump administration. Mm-hmm. And we do have things to worry about. We have things to worry about with how expansionist they've been in the South China Sea, the military kind of provocations they've made towards Taiwan. But a strong Chinese economy, at least a not completely failing Chinese economy, is really good for the world economy.
That's so true.
And that will contribute to American prosperity as well.
Absolutely. We want this Chinese stimulus program to work. We don't want China to collapse.
No.
A collapsing, decentralized China is not what we want.